Come, walk down the winding path. Don't mind the spooks and monsters. They stay hidden within the trees. There are mysteries in this world that you need to know, and paranormal truths that need to be told. Come, step up into the Caravan, where we share tales of old as well as new accounts about things you thought only existed in your nightmares.
Tonight our episode is the Dogman, and our discussion will be with Jennifer Ann. We'll be starting our conversation in the North American continent, meaning North American continent from Canada all the way down into Mexico. Jennifer, the Beast of Seven Shoots. There was a photograph taken back in June of 1995 in Quebec, Canada, and the gentleman was snapping pictures and never noticed it until the pictures were actually developed and saw something strange staring back at him from the woods. And as you can see in the picture itself, a rather eerie looking figure, seems to have a baboonish type of face and looks like it's holding an animal or a dog in its arm. But my opinion is it is definitely a creature. And again, this is my opinion, but it's definitely a creature. It looks extremely tall, and I can't tell if it's holding a meal or a pet under its arm, but that's all to speculation. What is your take on the Beast of Seven Shoots?
Personally, to me, it looks more like a different type of Sasquatch.
Right.
The traditional Dogman, at least what I, envision, is much more canine-like. Just a dog standing on two, his two back legs.
Right.
And that, to me, with it being more of a, it's a baboon type of a face.
Right.
So that's what I would categorize it as.
I would tend to agree with you, since there is a category that has been put out there by private researchers on the several types of Sasquatch. One of them having a elongated snout, but more human-like legs. Now, we can only see up to just below its chest there in the tree, so we really can't get a good look at the legs. But the arms seem rather human looking. Very tall, very muscular looking, and to see a creature like that, that would send chills up my spine. But yeah, that's a very good theory that it is and I don't know the types by heart, but I do know that there is a specific type that has been categorized with an elongated snout, but very baboonish looking. In a lot of Dogman reports, there is what is so-called the German Shepherd's type of ears on the top of the head, pointed, but I don't see that on the Beast of Seven Shoots photograph. It doesn't mean that because it's not a crisp, clear photograph that they don't exist there, but as far as the Dogman is concerned, with sightings like moving a little bit further south to Elkhorn, Wisconsin, the Beast of Bray Road, many of the witnesses that saw that creature says it's definitely a canid creature with the pointed ears and the hocks that give it the look of the backward bent leg, which would actually be the heel of the creature, and then it actually walks on its pads, so it gives it that kind of backward leg look. But it's very common for a dog, but to walk around bipedally and have similar human type of hands, or I've even heard it described as raccoon type of hands.
Oh, wow.
That in itself, I think we're probably talking a completely different type of entity or creature altogether. There has been those witness reports, and of course, I'm sure you being interested in this subject matter, I've probably heard some of those witness reports of this creature being on all fours, and as the witness sees it, it slowly starts to rise, and audibly you can hear bones kind of popping as the thing stands upright and proceeds moving on its rear haunch. I don't know.
See?
Yes, please interject.
That definitely takes me to, you know, like the monster movies, the werewolves, and all this kind of stuff. When you talk about the bones cracking and everything, because that's just like the, you know, the transformation that, you know, that they go through in the movies from human to werewolf.
Right.
And there was one encounter that I heard, I don't remember where or whose it was, but basically there was there was a family in a truck, and there was one or two kids in the back of the truck for some reason. And this thing had come out of the wood line, and it was standing straight, you know, like bipedally, and then it began to run. But when it was running, it was, you know, on all fours. And it had actually caught up with the truck.
Right.
And it was actually able to grab the back of it and almost grabbed one of the kids. Well, I don't remember how they shook it off. I don't remember if they just sped off, either sped up and it just, you know, went off. But from that encounter, and then also from Monsters Among Us, the book by Linda. That would be the very last cryptid that I would ever want to run into.
Right.
You know? I mean, it just seems like it is... I don't want to say it's from another world, but what I mean by that is, like, Sasquatch. You have these stories where, sure, it's scary, but sometimes, you know, it just seems like it's... I don't want to say it's more human, but almost like there's more of a... I don't know if you want to use the word care, but what I'm trying to say is that the Dogman just seems more demon evil-like.
Would you kind of maybe categorize it in a supernatural category, maybe?
I want to, just because, I mean, it's hard because I've heard the genuine stories about somebody actually seeing somebody turn into a werewolf.
Right.
And then there's the, you know, you see the footprints and then it disappears.
Right.
And
right.
So, I mean, I want to, yes. I definitely would like to categorize that as supernatural.
As supernatural. You know, the story in which you were referencing about the pickup truck, it was, they were Native Americans. They were on a camp trip, and yes, you're right. The two kids were in the back of the pickup truck, and I believe the girl...
You heard it.
Oh, yes, and the girl, she, I believe, was 7 years old, if memory serves me correctly.
Oh,
and the father who was driving the truck saw the beast in the rearview mirror, on his windshield rearview mirror, and yes, the beast ended up running on its hind legs and grabbed hold of the tailgate of the truck, and he kept speeding off, and it managed to snag the blanket that was covering the girl, but the children were absolutely terrified, but they did manage to outrun it to get them to safety. So
See, and that's crazy because I don't. Well, okay, let me back up. Do you remember any stories in reference to Sasquatch about him running like that?
Well, I have heard, witness testimony of a Sasquatch running parallel to a vehicle that was driving, and the vehicle was doing 30 miles an hour on a gravel road, and this thing had no problem staying right next to the vehicle, and it was running off the road, so it was running through the brush, but the woman that was driving the car clearly said it was a Sasquatch looking creature, not a dog or canid looking creature. So
I just have always had this thought of I wonder which one's faster. I don't know why.
Well, I would imagine, look, I've heard that Sasquatch can be mobile on all fours, as well as a Dogman can be mobile on all fours. So I would think just by design, probably the Dogman could move faster. Only
That's what I was thinking.
Because it has a smaller foot, less resistance maybe, and I know that we're talking physics to maybe something that is not of this physical world. I don't know. I don't think we'll jump too much into where does it come from, if it's through portals, or if they are just a natural creature, flesh and blood of this planet that just remains extremely elusive and in a rather smaller population. But you did refer to the Monsters Among Us book by Linda Gottfried, and as far as I know, Linda and Lon Strickler are probably the foremost in at least researching into the Dogman, or however you want to categorize it, either as a Dogman. I don't believe that werewolf or wolfman is really the proper terminology, only because I think those two terms are kind of Hollywood version of a human that turns into it. I don't think the Dogman is actually transforming back into a person again. But
question.
Yes.
A couple episodes ago, I had asked you if you had the ability to turn into a vampire, would you? What about a werewolf?
No.
No?
No, but I don't need that curse on me, and things hurt bad enough as it is. I don't need bones popping and growing hair in places I didn't want hair growing. So, yeah, probably not. And, again, what would I rather run into, Sasquatch or a Dogman? I think I'll probably stand on the side and have an encounter with a Sasquatch over a Dogman, even if the Sasquatch outweighs and is taller. I don't think the aggression is as bad as what the Dogman has been. I have yet to hear a Dogman encounter that has not had some menacing effects. So
right, because I think with a Sasquatch you have half of a chance to get away with it, but with a Dogman you're just instant food.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think you're in trouble if you don't have the capability to either move on, or if you're not armed, you might be in a world of hurt.
Right.
And of course, we cannot interview witnesses that have gone missing if they had an encounter with a Dogman, because they're no longer with us. So who's to say? Who's to say? I know moving a little bit further south out of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and the Beast of Bray Road, and moving down into the LBL, or as it's known, the land between the lakes, that's between Tennessee and Kentucky. And being that it's warmer weather down there, there have been just a plethora of reports and physical damage to campsites, and there are those stories. Now, the validity and the reality behind those stories have yet to be determined because of the fact that, yeah, I'm sure there's police reports, but there's also been dead bodies that were found back there in a very peculiar way. There was a family that turned up missing, and lo and behold, the family was found. I believe the father and the daughter were found up in a tree.
Oh my gosh.
So whatever did it, I can't see that being a savage person that would be able to get a person up into a tree. But we are talking the land between the lakes, Kentucky, Tennessee. It would either have to be an extremely large cat to get, the weight of a full-grown human up into a tree, or it's possible that it was a Sasquatch. I don't know.
We'll keep you up to date. And finally tonight, werewolf, Bigfoot, missing link, perhaps an elaborate hoax. The people in Taylor, Mississippi would like answers to these very questions. Our own Amber Maddox is in the field to file the story of Horror in the Hamlet.
For residents of tiny Taylor, Mississippi, it's the classic case of things that go bump in the night. Strange noises, unexplained shadows, and dogs barking for no reason have become the norm, all associated with what many in the area called the swamp booger.
Now, I blew it up so you can probably see it a little better.
But a recent photo taken by local Tina Bragg may have just substantiated what has long been considered a myth.
Now, I reckon you can really see it there. And is that one scary-looking something? Look at that mouth. Look at that eye. That ain't your natural dog running around in the bushes.
A sudden rash of animal mutilations and strange droppings have many believing that the mysterious creature is anything but a myth.
I ain't never seen nothing like that.
Aubrey Dale is a cattle farmer and was once skeptical of what he considered a fairy tale. But the discovery of some of his livestock torn apart by an unseen attacker and unexplained feces in his backyard has Mr. Dale rethinking his previous stance.
We had some cows tore up in the field, man. There was this stuff on the ground, this crap, man. I ain't never seen nothing look like that.
Though many in the area believe that this is the work of a Sasquatch, local Billy Teague is convinced this is the work of a creature from Cajun country known as the Rougarou.
Man, mutilating animals, cutting animals' heads off, howling at the moon. That's the Rougarou, all right, and I promise you, the worst is yet to come.
For now, local authorities aren't commenting on their investigation, but they are looking into the reports that grow in number with each passing week. For Tina Bragg, the answers can't come soon enough.
I live by myself, and let me tell you what, I'm going to be some scared somebody until the government or somebody comes down here and does something about this creature that's been terrorizing this town of Taylor. I'm tired of it, and everybody else is. And I want to know what it is, and I want it gone.
Reporting from Taylor, Mississippi, I'm Amber Maddox for Channel 7 News.
That's a rather interesting news report, and what the photograph that she did capture there from Tennessee. It's a strange-looking creature. I really couldn't identify, anything from, a hairless donkey to maybe it is possibly Rougarou or a Dogman in that area. Now, mind you, that town is just south of land between the lakes, so I kind of found it pertinent that it's within traveling distance, and for her to capture that, and she seems genuinely upset by the fact that whatever this creature is, it seems to be interfering with the town, so I don't know. It's an interesting take, that's for sure. So,
Well, go ahead.
no, that's it. I was just going to talk about the Rougarou.
No, go ahead.
Well,
I'll wait.
Like the gentleman said in that TV interview, that he believes it to be the Rougarou, and I know that is very popular lore. Whether you say it's popular or unpopular, because, the Rougarou in Louisiana and in the southern states, it's speculated that is just a demon creature. And it's absolutely up to no good and is considered the terrorist of all the cryptids. And I would kind of tend to believe that by some of the stories that come out of, the southern states. We have a friend, Bono Russell, who believes the Rougarou is just strictly demonic. And he's very forthright about that opinion. So, I don't know. What is your take on the Rougarou?
It was interesting. I was gonna say, but then I thought, well, I'm gonna hold on and wait till you finish.
Right. Well,
and that gave me the rest of the information that I needed. Because looking at the picture, honestly, to me it looks like a mask.
Well,
it looks like the way that I saw it, to me it looks like maybe a Native American mask.
Well, that's an interesting take.
I was going to ask you. And then I was going to ask you if there was any lore or legends dealing with some kind of a demon-type creature in that area, or what the Native American history could be in that area. So,
with that,
I wrote it down.
Okay. Yeah, with that, I'm not familiar with what the Native American lore is from that area. I'm not even sure what the First Nations would be through the Tennessee area. I mean, I know the Illini Indians were run all the way into southern Illinois and into Kentucky. So, I clearly there were other reservations in and around those southern states. That photograph that that we saw clearly from the news report, it was a full-size picture that's just the blown up of just the creature itself, but the whole photograph is rather dark, and you see a couple of trees when she snapped that picture. But that's a really interesting take that you bring up, that maybe it was a mask, could have been a Native American spirit. I don't put any.
I've got it pulled up here. And the way that it looks like it's made out of. To me, I see wood. I don't see that being flesh and blood.
Okay.
Especially because to me, it looks like it's got this huge open mouth.
Right.
That looks like a beak, but there's teeth.
Right.
And then there is like red, I'm gonna say painted on the inside for like a tongue or something. And then those ear horn things, whatever that is, and then the eye, it looks like, it all to me looks like it's like wood and painted. I don't know, and like energetically speaking, I feel like I shouldn't have ever looked at it. It really seems evil, really.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I mean, I'm not sitting here being speechless, but you're bringing up some very good points. At looking at that photograph, yeah, there's no hair on it. It seems like it's more of a polished surface, so to speak. So for you to say it looks like it could be made out of wood, that's not that far-fetched. I mean, who are we? I'm not a professional photographer analyst by any means. I'm just looking at the same thing that you've looked at, and that our listeners have looked at in the news report there. However, that does not explain what creature was killing off the livestock of the farmer, of the cattle farmer, and for him to have livestock, and for her to snap that picture. So who's to say?
I'm not necessarily saying just because it looks like it's made out of wood,
right,
it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying that it's a person wearing a mask. And I do need to clarify that so that when people listen, then they're like, they kind of get more of what I'm saying. To me, it may show up like that in the photographs. When it comes to spirits and stuff, and what I've learned or what I've experienced is everybody has their own filter and things can appear differently to each person.
Right.
So the photograph may make it look one way,
Uh-huh.
but in fact it actually looks maybe a different way because it's kind of what the spirit, I feel, designates on what it should or shouldn't be. And then, so I mean, I definitely feel that it's evil, for sure. And to me, seeing the picture look as it does tells me that it's very old.
Uh-huh.
Like an ancient type evil spirit.
That again, I'm going to have to say that's a really interesting take, because as you're bringing up those points, I'm certainly getting the flavor of what it is that you're talking about there, and it does make a lot of sense. It really makes a lot of sense to me. And again, Jennifer and I are not saying, hey, this is, an actual Dogman or Rougarou. We're just speculating in the feelings that we get from the photograph itself and from that news report.
Right.
As to what the possibilities are that may have not been brought up yet, and trying to think a little bit more outside the box of possibilities. So.
Well, and for me too, it's one of those things where, sometimes things are brought to me during the shows that I haven't seen or I don't have history with, and it's solely just to, because when I very first see something, there's just a really big energetic impression or a feeling, and I want to be able to share my first impressions as well with the audience, So.
Right. Well, I will say this much, that photograph was not debunked. So, and, there's a handful of other photographs that if you are actually watching this webcast, you'll have seen those photographs posting as, you're listening to the show. And some of those photographs that you have seen already have not yet been debunked, but yet they are kind of convincing looking that was quite possibly a Dogman type of creature anyway that was captured, on camera. And it seems to me that in every one of those pictures, I get this sinister sense from looking at it. So
yes.
I can imagine an encounter with a being like that would be probably a lot more intense in that sinister type of feeling, or the feeling of dread, which seems to be a very common report by witnesses, that there's just this sense of dread. Listening to this last episode of Into the Fray Radio, which was highlighting the podcast Monsters Among Us, Derek and Shannon played a audio clip from a caller who called into Monsters Among Us podcast, and his description was he was driving home from a Walmart. It was late at night. He picked up some headphones so that he could game with headphones because his pair broke, and on his route home he saw what appeared to be an extremely large hyena type of creature, that its back end was on one side of the road and its snout was on the other side of the road. That's an extremely huge creature to take up a lane of a road. And his testimony was that it was about 3.5 to 4 feet just at the shoulders, but that its hind end was lower than its front end, very hyena-ish type.
Right.
And going back to 101 Bigfoot nights, and that entire story, that the woman on the property claimed to have seen a number of hyena type of creatures around and we all know that hyenas are not indigenous to the States. That's something, in Africa, and hyenas just don't get that big. I mean, they're sizable and intimidating, but they just don't get that big. And, the witness stated when he come up on it and saw it, across the road in front of him, he said he got a good enough look at it where the hands on the front paws seemed to be that, like, not so much human, but more raccoon-like. What do you make of it? I mean, Derek's thought was, well, maybe it was a very large beaver, but come on, a beaver that takes up a lane of roadway.
An interesting thought that I had.
Uh-huh.
So when it comes to these creatures that are just huge and crazy and everything, I wonder if they are actual creatures, kind of like, like is Dogman an actual creature, is Sasquatch, whatever, or rather, which ones are spirits that are coming in the form of this?
Well, interesting.
I mean, it's just a thought.
Right,
just
no.
throwing another
Yeah,
strange
and
thing
again,
out there.
that's why you're here, because you do think outside the box, as opposed to, others that say, yay, it is, or no, it's not, it's a hoax, or no, that's real. Think outside the box, and, you do kind of specialize in that.
Well, and I also don't want to, I know that I throw out the spiritual side to a lot of things. And a lot of what I say, it's not necessarily like that I 100% believe that it's this way or that it's that way. I'm just throwing out ideas that what if, and that I just definitely want the listeners to know too, is that not everything's spiritual. Things can be fake, for sure.
Sure.
But, expand your mind.
Well, this is very true. It is very true. And I had a thought in which I'll switch gears a little bit, but I think it might be relevant to the Dogman or Rougarou or werewolf, whatever it is that you want to consider this cryptid as. But with the sightings of the Mothman in the city of Chicago, now we're talking about an entity that I'm assuming, and I think that every witness and researcher is probably assuming, that it is a full-grown creature. We don't have that many reports of running into a cryptid while it's in a juvenile state. And if it is in a juvenile state, it may just be brushed off as a natural creature. It's not until it's oversized that, it gets referenced as a cryptid. You kind of follow what I'm saying? Because I think if a Sasquatch, a juvenile Sasquatch that we're seeing, may just be referred to as, well, somebody's chimpanzee got loose and it gets brushed off as that, whereas if you see an 8 to 12 foot tall bipedal creature, that puts it in a whole different realm right there. Who's to say that, some of the sightings in Chicago of a large, unusual bird might be a juvenile? Again, we're only speculating. Because nobody knows the answer and there's no expert, and I'm sure that, with every webcast, podcast, and, presentation that is put onto YouTube, there are those critics that will say, no, you're absolutely wrong, but there is no experts, period. So all we can do is talk about it, speculate, take a different avenue of research that maybe hasn't been focused on as much, and use different tools to, make new discoveries. Because clearly, Jennifer, you know this, with the amount of witness testimonies, and I said this last week too, with the amount of witnesses that have seen these creatures, these cryptids, that would be a bigger hoax than the cryptid itself. To have that collaboration of that many people, not that they all talk to each other of, hey, let's make a hoax about this, but if so many people did hoax this, that would be a bigger news story than the actual cryptid itself. So, I have a tendency to believe that people are actually seeing and reporting something that is just not known as a natural creature. I'm not saying it's not natural, it's just a known, scientifically documented biological creature. And it is possible that, it's slipping through a veil that, we haven't discovered yet, and it can come in and out of that veil. Who knows? I'm very open to that. I am very open to that, and you probably are too, because you speak of it as well in a spiritual type of form. There's good spirits and bad spirits, and
Right.
I just find this whole thing.
Imagine one day, though, waking up to realize that our world isn't any different from some of those shows on TV. That we've got werewolves, we've got vampires, we've got Mothman, we've got all this stuff.
Right.
How do you think you would live life? How would you go to work that day?
Right.
What do you... Would it change things for you? For me, I think it would I think it'd be cool, but I think life for me, though, would stay the same a little bit. Just because it's like, sure, you could sit there and say, oh, all this stuff is real, but you don't see it on a daily basis.
Right. Well, so. I would say, look, on my daily life, when I get into a vehicle that drives on the road, I'm looking. I am always looking, and I don't think that would change. If there was something documented that, yes, there is such a thing as the Sasquatch, which, again, I do believe in. I believe it. I haven't seen it, but I believe the possibility absolutely exists. I also believe the possibility of Dogman and other cryptids do exist. And so my eyes are open, so I don't know how much it would change my world. And for those that just are not involved in this community at all, it probably wouldn't even faze them. It's just be, oh, great, yeah, there's a monster, big deal. I need to go to Wall Street.
Well, or would they even... I don't know if they'd even actually believe it, though.
Right, that's very true.
Some of them would.
Right.
Then others, I think, would still have that wall up.
Right. And I don't know what the chore is, and I don't think it's anybody's responsibility to make anybody aware of it if it is real. You can take the information and do with it whatever you choose. That's the freedom of choice that we do have. So, I'm interested in everybody's comments below of what your opinions are on, is this spiritually related? Is this, is this a flesh and blood natural creature? And I not only just referencing the Rougarou or the Dogman or whatever you want to refer to it as, but also, Sasquatch and Loch Ness and Mothman and Chupacabra and every other known cryptid in popular culture. What's your take on it?
I would like to know from our listeners in the comments if they could choose one to be 100% real. Which one would they want it to be?
Oh, that's really cool. Can they win a prize? All right, that's your challenge.
Maybe, I don't know.
That's your challenge, listeners. You put in there whatever cryptid you choose that you would push a button on to be real. What cryptid would it be? I like that. That's a wonderful question to ask. Which cryptid would you choose it to be? Well, Jennifer, I think we'll wrap it up with our Dogman episode tonight. That's it, Jennifer. Say goodnight, Jennifer.
All right. Good night, Jennifer.
Good night, Jennifer. We will talk next Tuesday. Until then, we'll see ya.
From childhood's hour I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm, and the cloud that took the form, when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view.